It's interesting because people often ask writers, it's a common question to us, why did you write, or where do you get your ideas? And one of the things I often say is, well, you need to pay attention to the world. I think that's something we all could do more. I didn't need to pay attention to this because I was living this. My wife and I are extremely deeply dedicated to each other and to family, to our own individual children, our own family, and to the idea of family. I mean, all the central role that family plays in human life and the incredible fruitfulness that it can bring into our lives. And that in itself would be enough reason to write a book, but the family in America, and many other places too, is not in a settled, stable situation overall, in my view. There have been huge changes in our society, primarily the movement of women into work, into the working world, and that has made things very different in the home. And a lot of people are living a life, and I can't remember, I use this line in the book, but I can't remember who it's from. A lot of families are living a life of what this writer called routine panic. Mm-hmm. And when I say routine panic to people, a lot of people go, oh, that's my life. That's the phrase that describes it perfectly. So the question is why? And this book was about how the modern American family is shaping up, and particularly about the role that men can play in it. I think men need to play a much stronger role. So that it was something that I was living myself, that my wife and I were living every day, talking about, dealing with, and I could also see these changes and challenges on a huge basis across the entire country. There is a tendency, and it's still out there sometimes, to marginalize fathers. I talk about in the book, one of the most chilling moments I ever encountered in my work on this book was, my research for it was, and I give a lot of examples of places where fathers are left out of a parenting context, mm-hmm. where parenting mm-hmm. is equated with motherhood. In one position, there was an article about families who had lost sons and daughters, mostly sons, I believe, but in Afghanistan or Iraq, soldiers who'd fought for the United States and had died. And in the writing about the grief of these families, they mentioned the mothers and they didn't mention fathers. Mm. Now, this to me was astonishing. And I thought partly that's because fathers have been absent or only partially committed to domestic life. A dad like my dad, who worked super hard for us, unbelievably hard, still was not home. He was an absent father. But on the other hand, what we envision is what we tend to end up with in society. It's funny because you make me think the humor of family life is just also another huge inspiration to me. This whole point about letting children and letting your spouse, letting the others in your family be who they are, and then living with them, right? Finding ways to work together. My sons and I used to play with their Matchbox trucks and mm-hmm. cars. I mean, these little things, we had a big bowl and we'd pour them out. So when Cassie, my daughter, this is some years later, my sons are in middle school by this time or older, I hadn't played with them, with those toys with her before. She and I played all the time in all kinds of different ways. So I said, wow, Cassie, we haven't played with these. Let's do it. So I did what the boys and I always did, which is take the little tub, dump them out on the living room floor, and we would play. There was a big junkyard, and the cars all start crashing into each other. So I'm doing this typical guy-style approach, right? And I look over, my daughter has picked up a little metal helicopter and a little metal boat, and it's saying, well, hello, little boat, are you sad? Yes, I'm sad, I don't have a friend. Well, I'll be your friend. She's doing relationship play, and I remember I told my wife later, I said, I don't know how to play Matchbox toys with her, I just don't know. So a lot of those, your emphasis on this diversity and how good that is great. A lot of the humor comes from that.
Yes.
And if it's in this context of love and acceptance, then those differences often are smoothed over just by the humor. What happens in families, in the aggregate, is the future of the world. The future of the world, not just the United States. What one person can do as a family member, the repercussions of this are amazing, both positive and in terms of a future that we all would like to have.